credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So your poo-pooing of this, it just shows you don't understand who we are as a country, who we are.
Welcome to Liberty Report USA. Let's take a look at what happened in the Senate today.
Senator Slotkin.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I said in your hearing, when you had your confirmation hearing, that my biggest concern with you at the helm was the potential use of the military in ways that contradict the Constitution or that taint what I hope we all want, which is an apolitical military. And when I asked you about whether you would accept an order that was actually given to your predecessor, Secretary Esper, Trump's SecDef, to deploy active duty troops against unarmed protesters and to, in Secretary Esper's words, shoot at them, shoot at their legs, you said this was all theoretical. Here we are, a few months later, you've deployed 4,700 troops to Los Angeles and against the wishes of the governor. And my colleague across the aisle was right. It is the first time since 1965 that we have deployed Guard troops without the permission of the governor. In all the instances he laid out, the president had sent in the military to protect protesters, not against the protesters. So you may dismiss it, but I feel like this is a fundamental issue of American democracy. If you love your country and you want an apolitical military, then it should be the last resort, not the first resort in our country to use them. So to get to the non-theoretical, have you authorized the uniformed military to detain or arrest protesters in Los Angeles?
Senator, I would just start by saying you're not a protester if you're throwing concrete
100%.
at law
Arrest those
enforcement
people.
officers.
Throw them in the jail. 100%. But what you're doing is something different. Everyone knows this is a political decision, right? So we don't trust that you're using the best interests of the military, certainly, and of democracy on top of that. So have you given the order? That's all I want to know. It's not theoretical. For the U.S. military, not law enforcement. They can arrest all day long. That's their job. Do they have the ability, the uniformed military, to arrest and detain protesters currently today? It's a yes or no thing, authority.
It's sort of amusing the extent to which the speculation is out there. These troops are given very clear orders.
Then what is the order? Then list it out for us. Be a man, list it out. Did you authorize them to detain or arrest? That is a fundamental issue of democracy. I'm not trying to be a snot here. I'm just trying to get the actual, did you authorize them to do that?
All of these orders and what they're sent there to do are public. They're
okay,
there
say it. So say it. Yes or no?
I'd like to.
Please, yes or no?
As I've said time and time again through interruption, they're there to protect law enforcement,
do they have
ICE
the ability
officers
to arrest?
who are trying to do their job, deporting illegals who were allowed in by the previous administration.
So they cannot arrest and detain citizens of the United States, the uniformed military.
As we've stated, if necessary, in their own self-defense, they could temporarily detain and hand over to ICE. But there's no arresting going on. And you know this better than you're trying to play political games. There's no arresting of U.S. personnel.
Of the U.S. military against members of the protest. Have you authorized U.S. military cyber tools to investigate people participating in these protests? Yes or no?
Certainly in no way that I'd be aware of.
Okay, that's good. I love that answer. That's great. Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So your poo-pooing of this, it just shows you don't understand who we are as a country, who we are. And all of my colleagues across the aisle, especially the ones that served, should want an apolitical military and not want citizens to be scared of their own military. I love the military. I served alongside my whole life, so I'm worried about you tainting it. Have you given the order? Have you given the order that they can use lethal force against unarmed? I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh my God. So your former predecessor, I guess that's not enough for you. Okay, on Iran. I don't think there's a debate, there's like a catfight going on in your own party about whether to go after Iran. Have you commissioned any day after planning? So any force protection, any use of ground troops in Iran, any cost assessments? Because I don't think we doubt what we can do as a country in the attack. It's the day after with Iraq and Afghanistan that so many of us have learned to be so deeply concerned about. Have you authorized day after planning?
As I've said, we have plans for everything, Senator.
Okay.
And I would also reiterate how we began that there will be classified portion of this 15 minutes after we adjourn.
In the final moments of this exchange, as Senator Elissa Slotkin pressed the question again and again, "Have you given the order?" the room seemed to tighten. Her voice carried that unmistakable mix of disbelief and urgency, the kind that emerges only when an elected official feels the very guardrails of the republic trembling beneath her feet. She was not speculating. She was not theorizing. She was confronting a reality she feared had already crossed from hypothetical to historic. U.S. troops deployed into an American city without the state's consent. And the possibility, however faint, however denied, that the military could be placed in direct confrontation with the very people it swears an oath to serve. And across from her sat Secretary Hegseth, shifting, deflecting, cutting through her questions with a blend of irritation and dismissal. When she asked him whether active duty forces had been authorized to detain or arrest protesters, he pivoted to framing the issue as political games. When she asked whether military units could use cyber tools to investigate Americans, he denied knowledge but moved quickly on. But it was when she asked about lethal force, when she asked clearly, directly, as if the entire weight of her service and her years in national security were holding the question in place, that the moment crystallized: a senator demanding clarity on the limits of military power, and a cabinet secretary unwilling to offer a simple, unequivocal no. This was not just another tense hearing. This was a confrontation about the soul of the American system. Because what unfolded here wasn't a clash between two personalities. It was a clash between two visions of government. One that sees military power as a last resort, constrained tightly by law and tradition, and another that speaks as if the boundary between domestic security and military authority is more flexible than history has ever allowed. Slotkin invoked 1965 for a reason. Because deploying troops without a governor's approval isn't a routine administrative choice, it's a moment that echoes across decades of constitutional norms. And when she asked about orders, she wasn't making up stories or reading from rumor. She referenced the words of a previous Republican Secretary of Defense who said in his own book that he had been pushed to send troops into American streets and to use force on demonstrators. She wasn't reading gossip. She was quoting a man who held the same office Hegseth holds today. That's why her voice tightened. That's why she demanded a yes or no. Because if the line between using the military to defend the Constitution and using the military to intervene in domestic political challenges becomes blurred, then the most precious principle of American life, civilian freedom from military intimidation, becomes negotiable. And negotiable is unacceptable. Throughout the exchange, Slotkin repeated one goal: an apolitical military, a military that belongs to no president, no party, no ideology, only to the Constitution itself. But as she pressed, Hegseth countered with the suggestion that her concerns were exaggerated, theoretical, even amusing. He deflected with mentions of concrete throwing. He veered into accusations about previous administrations. He brought up deportation policy in response to questions about military detentions. And he pivoted to the Bible rather than address a documented directive that a predecessor had refused to follow. In that moment, the hearing revealed a deeper tension simmering beneath Washington. A government wrestling with the boundaries of executive power, the integrity of military institutions, and the fragility of public trust. What Slotkin articulated with clear frustration is that democracies do not survive on vague assurances. Democracies survive on transparency, accountability, and the restraint of government power when emotions are high and political stakes are even higher. When a senator asks, "Have you authorized troops to detain citizens?" the country deserves an answer. When a senator asks, "Have you given the order for lethal force?" the country deserves clarity. When a senator asks, "Have you used military cyber capabilities on civilians?" the country deserves oversight. These are not trivial questions. They are the questions that distinguish a free society from one where authority operates behind closed doors and answers only to itself. And when Hegseth told her to be careful about believing books, except one, it became painfully clear just how wide the gulf between these worldviews had become. One worldview demands documentation, rules, and precedent. The other dismisses documentation when it becomes inconvenient. This hearing was not about left or right, not about who wins an argument or who speaks louder. It was about whether the immense force of the U.S. military, the greatest fighting force in human history, should ever be directed, even indirectly, even momentarily, toward the American people themselves. Slotkin's fear was not abstract. It was rooted in history, in testimony, in experience, in the long record of what happens when nations forget the delicate balance between civil authority and military might. Her voice was a reminder. Hegseth's evasions were a warning. And the nation, watching from afar, is left with a question that echoes far beyond this room. Who decides how power is used? And who ensures that power never crosses the line that separates liberty from something far more dangerous? In the end, Slotkin returned to the same principle she began with, the oath taken by the military, the oath taken by Congress, the oath taken by every public official entrusted with authority over the lives and freedoms of the people they serve. That oath is not to a president, not to a political movement, not to a party. It is to the Constitution. And if that oath is ever compromised, even once, even for a moment, then the American experiment itself begins to tremble. This hearing may fade from headlines, but the questions it raised will not, because the future of democratic governance depends on them. This is the story playing out in real time, the tension between power and principle, between force and restraint, between authority and accountability. And that is why channels like Liberty Report USA exist, to shine light into moments where the stakes are high, the answers are unclear, and the truth matters more than ever. If you believe in transparency, if you believe in oversight, if you believe in a government that answers to its people, then subscribe to Liberty Report USA. Stay informed, stay aware, and stay engaged in the defense of American democracy.